And we're back. We've learned two different ways to graph so far. One of them was using the XYT chart, and that one works all the time. And the other one was using the intercepts. Here's the thing. You're going to have to be able to find intercepts even if you choose never to graph using them. Because there are going to be questions where they ask you to find the intercepts from now until the end of all of your mathematical career. You will have to be able to find the intercepts. And you always do it the same way, just like we did, plugging in 0 for each one. So that should be fine. So it's not like you can forget how to find intercepts if you choose to graph using a different method. But in order to graph the most important way, the way that works all the time, the way that is convenient, the way that you will always want to use from now until the end of time, you will need slope. Guess what? There are 3 different ways to find this too. The first is by using the formula. M equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. This formula you will need to memorize. You will always use this formula when you are given 2 points. Doesn't matter what it is they're asking you to do. Whenever you're given 2 points, you're going to have to know this formula. You'll use this formula when they give you x1, y1 and x2, y2. So usually the first thing I tell my students to do is to go through and decide what's going to be your x1, your y1, your x2, and your y2, and label it out, and then come over and use the formula. M stands for slope. Why they picked M is because, you'll like this, the Latin word for mountain starts with an M, and that's where they get the word slope from, because you talk about the slope of a mountain. That's good, right? It's the only part of Latin I know. Sorry. That's all I got for you. So, they gave us this point right here. They want us to find the slope between these 2 points. In order to do that, the first thing I'm going to do is write down my formula for slope. That's because if you want to memorize something, you write it down every time you use it. That way you'll know when to use it. You'll not only memorize the formula, but you'll know when to use it because you write it down every time you use it. So over here, I have to decide, this is going to be my x1 and this is going to be my y1. This is going to be my x2 and this is going to be my y2. It's okay if you decide this should be x2 and y2 and this x1 and y1. Doesn't matter which point you call the first one. Either way, you're going to end up with the exact same slope. So that's okay. So when I go through and I do this, my y2 is 7. So instead of me writing y2, now I'm going to write 7. Instead of me writing y1, I write 5. Instead of me writing x2, I write -1. And instead of me writing x1, I write 3. 7 minus 5 is 2. -1 minus 3. Same thing as adding on, you get -4. 2 over -4 reduces down to a -1/2. That's your slope. When we're talking about slope, we really like fractions, improper fractions. We don't want mixed numbers, we don't want decimals. Slopes should always be a fraction. We'll talk about why that is later on. Next page. I did 1. Now you try 3. 3 whole problems. Woohoo! You can do it. I want you to find the slope between those points. This is when color really comes in handy, because sometimes it's hard to write as small as I wrote on here and still make it neat. So m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. y2 is negative 4. y1 is negative 4. x2 is 1. x1 is negative 3. Notice that the minus is part of the formula. So don't just say that negative 4 right there is just a 4. It's got to be a negative 4. So now is when you come back and you change your double negatives to pluses. That gives me 0 on top, and 1 plus 3 is 4 on the bottom. That's the slope of 0. For the next one, (3 minus negative 6 over 2 minus 2). That's 3 plus 6 over 2 minus 2. That's 9 over 0. 0 on the bottom means that it is undefined. Otherwise known as no slope. And then there's this one. Same formula. This time, we know that you've already done it. So I'm going to make this my x2 and my y2. My x1 and my y1, so that you can see you get the same answer. y2 in my case is negative 5 minus 2, and then x2 is 7 minus negative 3. Negative 5 minus 2 is negative 7. 7 plus 3 is 10. So you get negative 7 over 10. Which is what you got. So it doesn't matter whether you put this as your x1 or this one as your x1. As long as you make sure whatever has x1 also has y1. If I were to do it the way that you did it, then my y2 is 2, and it would be 2 minus negative 5. Over negative 3 minus 7, which gives you a positive 7 on top, negative 10 on the bottom, and I'll just move it to the top. Because it doesn't matter whether it's on bottom or on top or out front, as long as there's only one negative, you're good. Now, this brings up a couple of things you need to know. There are two very important facts that you should memorize. Very, very, very important facts. Oh, I gotta put this in blue. Sorry. No slope, which is what we got up there, is undefined. That means that it's going to have x equal to some number for its equation. And back up here, when you saw that it was undefined, if you look, our x's are the same number. Since our x's are the same number, That's what gave us the 0 on the bottom. Our equation for that line would be x is equal to 2, because our x's are the same number. Up here, if you look at this one, our y's are the same number. That's what gave us the 0 on top. So our equation for this one must be y equals some number. So over here for 0 slope, our equation looks like y equals a number. For no slope, it's going to be a vertical line. And for 0 slope, it is a horizontal line. Horizontal means it looks like this. Vertical means it looks like that. These two facts, if you memorize them, will help you figure out the bulk of the information that you need to know for the rest of this time for graphing. It helps you do about 1/3 of the problems on the test, on just about any test having to do with graphing. Just this information helps you solve them so much faster. But you have to remember what's in the clouds. If you don't memorize what's in the clouds, then you're never going to know. So make sure you memorize the stuff that's in the clouds. And I will tell you every single time we use one of these facts, think about your clouds so that you'll go back and look at your clouds. So don't lose this page. It's important information. Let's see. So, let's talk about the second way to find slope. The first way was if they gave you 2 points. The second way, and by using the formula, because that's what you use the formula for, is when they give you 2 points. The second way is when they give you a graph, when they show you a picture and they want you to find the slope. In order to do that, the first thing you have to do is find some pretty points. Pretty points are where the graph crosses at a perfect T. So when I look at this line B right here, this spot right here where the line crosses my coordinate plane behind it, that's not at a perfect T. It crosses it, but it's not at a perfect T. But if you look down here, right there, that's at a perfect T. The line crosses that T exactly. If I look further down this line, I can come up with another point where it crosses T exactly. There's another one. Down here is another one. And it keeps on going. That's what we're looking for, places where the line crosses that point exactly. That's because we can find slope by using something called rise over run. Rise is how far to get to the next point. In other words, how far up, because it's rising to get to the next point. And run is how far over. And we want it to be a fraction. So we want to write it as a number on top of a number. Fractions are good. So when I look at this line, let's say I use this point down here and this point right here. If I start at this point and I count to see how far up I have to go to get to that point, I go up 1, 2, 3. So for B, I went up 3, and then I go over in the negative direction 1, 2. So that gives me negative 3 over 2 for my slope. Let's say I hadn't seen this point right here. Let's say I saw this point and I saw this point down here. Well, that's okay. This point and this point. Put a little red halo around them. If I count up from here to there, I go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay? Go up 6, and then I go over 1, 2, 3, 4 in a negative direction 4, which reduces down to negative 3 over 2. So you're going to get the same thing no matter which points you use on this line. That's why it's called the slope, because it'll always be the same for this line. Now when we get to a different line, we're going to get different pretty points. So when I look at line A, a pretty point for it might be this point right here, and then we don't get another one until this point right here. So when I go up 1, and then I go to the left 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. A was up 1, back 6, that's negative 1 over 6. You try C and D. So for C, I can use this point right here. Now I'm going to come down here and use this point right here. It might not be the closest, but they're both apparent to me. They both jumped out. So from here, I count up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then I go over 1, 2, 3. So that's going to be 6 over 3, which reduces down to 2 over 1. Because we're talking about slope, leave it as 2 over 1. Yes, it's the exact same thing as 2, but remember I told you we want a slope to be a fraction. We want to leave it as a fraction if we can. And then for D, come over here where there's not much written down yet. I go up 1 and over 3. So my slope is 1 over 3. F and G aren't up there yet. We have to draw F and G. F looks like this. Pretend it's straight. Gotta find a better color. Hold on. Here we go. Might not come out looking blue, but it's blue. Okay, it's a dark blue. Yeah, that one's black. This is blue. It's a really dark blue. This one is G. So for F, when I go up, I can go up because I can go from here to there, but I can't go over any. So that's like 2 over 0. And we said if the 0 is on the bottom, that means it's undefined. That means it's no slope. For G, That's up none and over 2 from my 2 points. That's 0 on the top, so that's 0 slope. Back to what I told you just a few minutes ago in the clouds. If it is a vertical line, it's going to be no slope. If it is a horizontal line, it's going to be 0 slope. Works that way every time. In fact, just at first glance, you can tell if a slope is positive, negative, 0, or no slope. So if a slope is positive, that means it's going to start in the bottom part and end in the top. Going to go uphill. If a slope is negative, it's going to be going downhill as you read from left to right. So as I go from left to right here, I'm traveling uphill. As I go from left to right here, I'm traveling downhill. If you look back up here, A and B were negative slopes. They both went downhill. Some went downhill more than others did. That's because it has a larger slope. 1.5 is bigger than 1/6, so it had a larger slope. For C and D, they were both positive, so this one goes uphill and that one goes uphill. Some go uphill faster than others go uphill. That's because they have a larger slope. C's slope was 2, D's slope was 1/3. No slope, I already told you, was a vertical line, so it's going to look like that. And 0 slope, I already told you, was a horizontal line, so it's going to look like that. Doesn't matter where it's vertical and where it's horizontal. It could be vertical over here or horizontal up there or horizontal down here. What matters is which way it goes as it travels. You can think of no slope as not having any way of getting to the top. It has no slope whatsoever. 0 slope is when it's just as easy as can be to get to where you're going. This one, there's no possible way of driving the truck up that. This one, there's no worry in driving a truck because there's 0 worry. Okay? So, there is one way left, but I think it's best for us to wait on that one until tomorrow. So I'm going to go ahead and tell you what the homework is for tonight. Make sure you're going back and reading over previous days and looking at them, because some of the stuff that I tell you to memorize, you really have to have down to understand some of the things that are coming up. This is on page 386 and 387. The class exercises, numbers 1 and 3, and then the practice exercises, numbers 1 through 9 odd, and number 31. And you'll see me tomorrow.